And we are live. Good morning, everybody. Beautiful Friday here in Colorado. We had a big snowstorm. I'll get into that a little bit later, but welcome to the live stream Food Safety Chat. We're here every day, Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain, so 10 a.m. Eastern, and I'm with the lovely Melody Gee here today. Melody, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. How's your weather back there?
We're getting warmer and warmer. Spring is here. Cherry blossom is gonna bloom soon. So we're getting there.
Yeah, that was something. Yeah. So as we were talking a little bit before we got on live here, is I lived in the East a little bit for a while in Pennsylvania and upstate New York, and back East they have definitive seasons. So you go into spring and everything blooms and it's pretty, and then you go into the hot summer. Out West in Colorado and Wyoming and things like this, where I grew up, spring is not really there. It just kind of transitions. And in this time of year, this is when we get our most snow. Good morning, Jill. How awesome to see you.
Good morning, Jill.
And this is really when we get our most snow. So of course we got walloped with a big storm here in Colorado. And what happens is you'll get these storms that come up from the south. Good morning, Helen. Always good to see your happy face. Helen's awesome. I love Helen. And the storms come up from the south and they spin counterclockwise and they hit the mountains and then they just sit there. And so in our area, we had well over 2 feet of snow, a little bit north of us, over 3 feet of snow. And that wasn't even in the mountains. So everything was like, because it was like this super heavy, wet snow. And you go out to scoop it and your back is killing you. And it's just really awful. But then it also melts fast. So I would say it's half gone already.
Neat. I'm just glad your power is back.
Oh yeah, me too. Luckily, it went out for just a little bit, and then you're like, oh no, right? Because then that's no fun. Because then now you can't work or do anything. So everybody, I'm in Colorado, and Melody is in the DC area. So let us know where you're at and how things are going. I'm always surprised when we do these live streams. We get people, like I was telling Melody, we get people from Turkey and all around the world who are checking in on this live stream, which is amazing. Which really, I'm gonna try and do a clever segue here, which really kind of goes of how we communicate, right? And food safety and all these type of things, and how we communicate these things is super, super important. And I think really, Melody, that goes into our theme for today, which is food safety culture and all of the things around that. So we'll dive into that in a bit. And I just realized there's 2 things we haven't done yet. Before we get into it, I'm ready to go on this topic. There's, first off, is your introduction, right? Of course. So you are the VP of Governance, Intelligence, and Analytics for Corvium. Yeah. And for people out there who aren't familiar with Corvium, I know a lot of people are, but for those who aren't, what does Corvium do?
So Corvium is a data-driven platform for food safety solutions, including environmental monitoring, sanitation, product testing. And what we do is we do compliance and conformance for our users. And that's what I got brought on board. So I ensure our product is also in compliance with FDA, USDA regulation. And again, Corvium is a data-driven platform. So, and solution. So we also do data statistics, analytics, and business intelligence.
Nice. Yeah, you guys are doing a lot of good stuff over there.
And we grow really fast lately.
Now, the second thing that we need to do, and people who are on this live stream always laugh because I do this all the time, is I forget. I get too excited and I go too fast. Everybody, we need to have our morning drink. So Melody, with her super cool cup, I love that cup. And of course, I got my coffee. So everybody, please join us in our Friday morning drink of beverage. You gotta give an right? When you do it.
Hi, Bruce, by the way.
Good morning, Bruce. So food safety culture, right? Melody, there's a ton of buzz out in the food safety world around food safety culture because of the recent passage of a law in the EU, right?
Yes. And the reason I want to discuss this with your group is I feel like a lot of time we are hitting on these all buzzword, and all the food safety professionals tend to forget why we're doing that. We never forget our intention is food safety. And before this, I I even did a dictionary check, like what is culture? So culture in the dictionary, it actually means the quality in a person or a society that arises from a concern for what is regarded as excellent in arts, letters, manners, and etc. So I did a Wikipedia. They have a different definition, but I think it also relates to us. It says culture is an umbrella term which encompasses the social behavior and norms found in human societies, as well as the knowledge, beliefs, arts, laws, customs, habits of individuals in these groups. So what really kicks me is the knowledge, the social behavior, and the capability, the habits. So if we put these in food safety facility, then there's a lot of things we can talk about what is food safety culture within your facility.
Right. And yeah, so habit, yeah, that's definitely one that popped out at me too within that. And I think part of the issue where a lot of companies get caught up is they think of food safety as somebody's job, right? All right, Bryan's running quality for the company. He's in charge of food safety. It's even in his title. Therefore, he's responsible for it. And that's not really the case, right? This is something that everybody needs to do.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. Yep. And also another thing, sorry, did I interrupt?
No, go ahead.
Another thing I was thinking of, and I would like to discuss with your community, is a lot of time so food safety culture was brought up by GFSI white paper years ago. And then Frank has a book about food safety culture way earlier. And then now EU just passed this food safety culture law. Everybody was saying, oh, culture, how we define it, it should be different in different business. But I want to pause here and let everybody think, is it really? Because we are talking about food safety culture. It is it should be based on food safety. And what's different is how you execute this culture will be different. That is based on your business operation. Different business has different operation culture. But to us, we are all food safety professionals. The food safety culture should be all aligned in the food safety industry. The part different is how to execute it is different.
No, I think that's a really important distinction to make, right? Because food safety is universal, right? And everything requires food safety. And part of the problem, I think, with that is it's just assumed that it's going to be there. It's one of those things. One of the lessons I always used to tell my quality managers when I was running quality at different food companies is that if you do your job right, nobody notices. Right? Because everything is working the way it should. And food safety doubly so. And what's interesting is here in the United States, we take it for granted that food safety is always going to be there, right? We drink our coffee and we put the cream in and we don't give it a second thought of, oh, is this got salmonella in it? Is this going to make me sick? Do I need to worry about this? But what's interesting, Melody, is as soon as we go on vacation to another country, then our food safety radar kind of goes up. And we're like, okay, should I eat this salad? I don't think I'm gonna eat this salad. I'm not gonna have water. I'm gonna have a beer instead or something like that we feel safer with. And it's very interesting that trust element changes so dramatically because that the culture around that is different.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up the food safety team. People shouldn't notice it because it made me think about an example of IT department. Mm-hmm. So if everything runs well with our computer, everything runs well. We didn't even notice there's an IT department until my computer is broken. And I related so much to that. And I think food safety is the same. If everything runs well, it is just an part of your business culture and embedded in your daily operation.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so with companies, if they have an issue, it's interesting, right? Because they'll say, oh, we've had a food safety issue. And they'll say, okay, well, food safety people go fix it. And it's like, well, no, it's larger than just what we're doing in food safety. Because we have this issue, this is really something that's tied to culture and how the company is actually doing things. And it's very interesting because this will cover all kinds of parameters. So for example, if a company is very agile and likes to launch products really quickly, which isn't a bad thing, and they're always putting out new products and new things, and they're going faster and faster and faster. That's a risk to food safety, right? And the assumption a lot of times, Melody, is that, oh, we've been able to do it in the past, we can do it in the future. And that may not be the case because you're straining the system too much. And one of the things that I've always noticed is we always had our biggest issues in manufacturing at the busiest times. And people would go, oh, why did this happen now? We need all this product, right? So it's right before Christmas and you've got the holiday rush. And now all of a sudden the machines are breaking down and you've got quality issues and all these things happen. And they're like, oh, this is the worst time. Why did this happen? And my response back is always, of course it happens now. It happens now because we aren't cleaning right. It happens now because we're not maintaining our machines. It happens now because we're pushing food out the door too quickly. We're stressing the system. So of course it happens, right? And it's the same with product development and design control. If you go too fast and you don't think, and I think this is really the key for food safety then, is what I try and pound in the head of organizations is the entire company needs to be thinking when you do all of these activities, what do we need to worry about for food safety? What does the food safety team think about this? And I think a lot of times that's missing.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm glad that's a very good example because you mentioned equipment, you mentioned a sanitation team, you mentioned a product development team. And I was thinking about the definition of the culture is that we need to bring them on board with the knowledge of food safety so that when they develop their projects, they have this mindset in head already, so we don't have to do a reaction. Another thing I was thinking is because we are food safety professionals, we do really care about the product safety, and we're a caring person, and we put everything on our own shoulder.
Yes.
Like I will use an example like a food safety team meeting. It's a core of you communicate what is food safety, what you do to the department, to other departments. And this is a great opportunity that you can involve sanitation, equipment, product testing, even I will say finance, HR, because of finance will give you, if they have a food safety in mind, they might sense a food fraud earlier than you if there is a supplier bankrupt. Or HR, then they have the training, they have the job description design, they will have food safety knowledge in mind. They don't have to know as in depth as it, but they need to know what is food safety. And then those can help your company as a whole when there's FDA inspection, right? Because otherwise, the HR person will be grabbed to the food safety meeting and answer a question like, hey, how you design your job description? And then he'll be like, what's going on? I didn't even know we have an FDA inspection for our company.
Right.
So yeah, so that I think that you have a very good example there, and then I think this can help the culture.
No, that's an extremely important point because and Jill, who's in our comments here, can relate to this as well, right? And because Jill and I spoke about this as well. Yeah. It's the people element, right? We do what we do, Melody, and you hit it perfectly. We do what we do because we care and we're morally obligated and we're protecting the public in these things. And we tend to take these things on all ourselves. No, don't worry about it. I'll do it. Right. And that's wrong. Right. And a lot of times that's a really hard thing. I don't know if it's ego or what, it's like only I can do this. You need to be effective at communicating these things out. You're the leader of food safety. You're not the executor of food safety, right? You need to be going to the engineering team and teaching them and saying, hey, listen, when you're going out and buying machinery, it may be cheap for a reason, right? Don't think that you've scored a good deal, because if you bring it in the plant and I can't clean it, it's worthless. If you bring it in the plant and it doesn't meet 3A standards in the US, we're going to spend a lot of money fixing that stuff. So anytime you're thinking about changing anything in the plant that impacts food safety, it has to go to my food safety team. If you don't do that, I'm going to be coming back to you and ask why you're doing this and wasting company resources.
Back to the yeah. So it comes back to the habit as well. So if you have the education everybody has the basic knowledge of food safety, then they will have a habit of thinking, oh, is this impact our product safety? I'll have an example. When I was working for a retailer company, and then we have food safety and quality team will work closely with purchasing, so the buyers, and then they go out, source their suppliers. At the very beginning, they only look at the product. Does it taste good? Is the price meeting their executive team's needs? That's all. And then I always get hit afterward when I visit this facility. Oh my, this manufacturer will not meet our standard, internal standard.
Right.
So then I think, no, we need to shift the order. We can have a training for all the purchasing department or procurement for equipment in your case, and I have them understanding why we're standing in between. We're not standing in between you and business. We're standing in between here because we will protect our consumers and prevent our product safety from happening. So those are also a communication, like you said. A lot of time I think we can serve as a coordinator and get this knowledge out to have everybody on board.
Absolutely. So I think what's really important here with this, and something we need to remember in quality, is that everybody has a job to do and they have different goals. And it's that old saying, right? What gets measured gets managed. So if the procurement group has in their objectives and their bonus for that year is based on getting product to the plants on time, getting product at the cheapest price they can, all of the things that procurement is judged on, and it doesn't include food safety, you're not going to be promoting that culture. As a matter of fact, you're going to have two different divisions in the company that are fighting each other. Because now the procurement group will view that when the food safety people come, it's like, oh, they're just making my job harder, right? I need to find cheap product, but they're keeping me from doing my job, right? So it's viewed that you're adversaries instead of on the same team.
Yep, absolutely. Agree.
Yeah, so that's always a huge thing. One of the programs we put in place that worked really successfully, and we've talked about this in the foundation as well, is we had a supplier evaluation program where we had a simple little Excel file where we had things that I was worried about in quality. So recalls, your GFSI audit score, your complaints per million pounds, all these type of things, all my quality metrics. Then I went to the procurement group and said, okay, guys, what are you worried about? And they're like, okay, well, we're worried about invoicing, and we're worried about order completion rate, and we're worried about damage, and all of these type of things that they were worried about. I'm like, okay, that's fair. And then for our big suppliers, our critical suppliers within the company, once a quarter, a representative from procurement and a representative from quality would meet with them, and we would give them a score and say, okay, well, you're doing pretty good on the procurement side, but my quality team isn't happy. Yep, you guys didn't do good on your audit, and we heard your company had a recall. That's not good. Tell us what's going on. And Melody, 9 times out of 10, those people who came to the meetings to talk with us had no idea. They're like, oh my God, really? We're doing all these? Yes, you guys need to fix these. If you don't fix these things, we're going to go find somebody else.
Yeah.
And that opened up that communication on that food safety side that group wasn't really looking at. And now they understood.
Exactly. And then it's also the matter of how you communicate it, how you bring everybody on board, how you ask for the proper resources. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. So let's see. Helen had a comment here. Actually, don't slot your requirement to anything that will affect food safety needs to be communicated to the food safety team. Any and every change should be communicated to the team and the decision made by the food safety team as to whether it affects food safety or not. No, yeah, you're right. That's a good distinction, Helen. Thank you. We don't want other people making the food safety decisions. Right? The food safety team is the group responsible for that. So 100%, I agree with that. So that was a good comment. Cool. So what's interesting in the organization too, then, is the farther you go up, the more that team is isolated from the food safety requirements, and they need to understand that because companies now, if there are food safety failures, senior executives in companies can be held responsible for that. Exactly.
Yeah. So you better communicate that to the executive team prior.
I mean, so what's interesting is so, and we saw this. So I was on the SQF Technical Advisory Council, and Melody worked for SQF for a period of time, and we would have meetings with the certification bodies and these type of things to go over these type of things. And food safety culture was a constant topic, right? So we're moving in the right direction, right? Where it's becoming more and more available and people understand the importance of it. And part of the challenge, right, was that it's not something that's easily measurable, right? There's no food safety culture score that you can go and look at and say, oh, okay, this is a good food safety culture. And you mentioned it earlier, Melody, right? It's that base of, okay, food safety is the same for everyone. Now, what do you do as a company to actually do it? And there's just these little things, right? So as an auditor, you would see these things when you would go into a plant. So for example, you go into a plant to do an audit and you're only there with the quality manager. Nobody else shows up, right?
Yeah.
That's a big indicator that there's not a food safety culture. And you have the closeout meeting and the plant manager comes and the operations manager. And the first thing they say is, okay, what's my score?
Yeah.
Interesting, right? That's not a food safety culture. Or you go out on the plant floor and everybody who's working is doing this, right? They don't want to talk to you. They don't want to see you. And you're like, okay, this is not a good sign, right? The employees on the floor should be curious. They should be asking you questions like, oh, hi, who are you? Why are you in our plant? What can I tell you? Here's what I do. All these types of things, right? That engagement across those platforms is critical, right? And it gets back to that people side of things.
Yeah. And then I agree. And I saw Bruce a very good comment. So I think I agree with Bruce as well, because it's really how important that they wanted to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So as Bruce is saying here, let's see here. So we've got culture are those things you do even when no one is watching. Yes, absolutely. It really then is the things that people want to do or habitually do because they want to, not because they're asked to. During the pandemic, all of a sudden we saw people wanting to wash their hands and wanting to clean surfaces, right? And guess what? Diseases went down, right? Absolutely. People have been asking those questions, right? Of, okay, we've been going through all this COVID stuff and now flu and everything else disappeared. Where'd it go? Well, to Bruce's point, people are starting to get good habits. And on the food safety side, we're like, yeah, right?
Yeah. And then I want to expand a little bit what you said about the auditors, when they audit on the floor. Another thing it's quite obvious to the auditor is when you interview an employee, and at SQF, they ask auditors to interview everybody. The interviewee, the employee, if they are scared of answering, and that's another thing, food safety, like when we prepare the culture, we need to address that. Because oftentimes people think when we walk in as a food safety professionals, we are a cop. We always, hey, here's goes wrong. But something also would help is it is okay if you saw a chemical bottle is next to a production line, but you need to tell the person why we don't put a chemical bottle next to a production line. And then, like Bruce said, then we make them, they wanted to. We can address the story, address issues in different ways to associate with them. And that way, if the auditor asks them question during an audit, they will be confident on answering all the questions because they know why they're doing it, what happened, instead of a first reaction on, oh my God, I did something wrong. There's something happened to me. Did I lose you, Bryan, again? Well, let's see the comment. And then I think another... I completely lost Bryan. Okay. Hi, everybody. Okay. I don't know if you heard what I said, but I think one thing I was saying is we can encourage employees to understand why they're doing it, and it is okay. Things happen. So to build the confidence inside out that they are in this part to build, they are part of the food safety culture, or they are part of the culture.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not quite sure with my internet there, but weird. So one of the things that I would always look out for really, really closely is what I called kind of the hidden culture. And the way I would kind of think of this, Melody, is you have processes and training and things that you want people to do. But then they would go through that, and then the new employee would go out on the floor and meet with their supervisor, and the supervisor would say, okay, everything they just taught you, forget that. This is how we really do things, right? And if that happens, you're in a lot of trouble because you're going to have mistakes going and you'll have no idea why. So you need to make sure, and this is where the organization needs to be involved. One of the things on the COP side, and we're guilty of this, right? The temptation to do this is super, super strong. You go out on the floor and you see somebody who's not wearing their hairnet right. You're like, hey, fix that hairnet, right? Right. And they fix their hairnet and you walk away and they're like, who was that? Oh, that's the VP from corporate. He comes here once in a while. Don't worry about him. And then they go back to what they're doing. And so I realized that's very ineffective. And what I would do is I changed my approach on that. And I would, if I saw somebody, again, not wearing their hairnet correctly, I would go and find the supervisor and say, hi, supervisor, you're responsible for this area? And she'd go, yes, this is my area. I do this and this. I'm like, great. Do your employees in your responsibility follow GMPs and all the rules? And they're like, oh, absolutely. And I would say, oh, I'm a little confused. There's an employee out there who works for you. That person works for you, right? Yep. They're not wearing their hairnet right. Why is that? And they would go, right?
Yeah.
And they would be embarrassed. And then they would go, I'll fix that right away. I'm like, thank you. And then they would go out and I would walk away. The difference now is that supervisor goes to that employee and say, what are you doing? You know how to wear the hairnet. Yeah. That was the VP. He just came here and called me out, right? We can't, I'm watching you now, right? You need to be wearing that correctly. I know you know how to do it. Don't do that again, right? So now you're managing it at the correct level and you're involving the team, right? It's just not that police mentality that you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just saw a question from Ruffle about Corvium. Yes, we do data. We also are a SaaS platform to provide digital EMP sanitation and product testing solution. We're the best out there, the best. And we really provide a visualization of how you do EMP, how you do sanitation. And here's another thing we think through our communication with the users. We see people buying with all our solutions and they agree we all need to do it. But then they were like, okay, the margin, the margin of the business, the budget of the business, the cost of the product, yada, yada. We totally understand. But this also circle back how our food safety professionals can communicate, ask the right resources from our best business and C-level. Because, for example, if our C-level would like to see numbers, then we communicate it in a way in numbers. We map out, here is the cost of our solution for sanitation EMP. And then we map out, if you don't use this, I foresee when there's a recall happen or when there's a equipment downtime happen, that is the cost we will facing. Not to mention you might be in the jail as well, right? So it's also circle back how we embed this mindset and this knowledge in everybody, every level in the company for that. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think this is kind of a good point to circle back now with the regulation in the EU that passed earlier this month, right? So we've been talking about it, and essentially it's been voluntary under the audit schemes and things like this, but now Europe has stepped up and made these things mandatory. And there's a really nice summary of the law that was put together by the team over at Hogan and Lovells, who do a great job on food law over in DC. If anybody wants to copy this, happy to send it to you. You got my email here. But I made some highlights in here, Melody, and I think this is really hitting in what we're talking about. And what's interesting about this is it's only one page, right? This summary, and they talk about how the operators need to do these things, right? It's the exact things that we're talking about. And there's only 5 bullet points. The first is commitment of management. Engage the employees. You need to be aware of the importance of food safety, communicate, and then availability of resources, right? All of these things. Now, what's interesting is they took that first bullet point, the commitment of management, and then put that into point 2 and expanded on that even more. Because then they're saying, all right, management needs to also include roles and responsibilities. And I think what they're missing there on that is authority. Right? If you are managing food safety in a production facility and you have no authority to impact anything, right? You can't shut down the line if you see bad product, or you can't put things on hold or things like that. It doesn't matter how much responsibility you have in that area. Without the authority, it's not going to work. Changes are planned, right? Design control, what we were just talking about. Management needs to understand that. Of course, they need to verify stuff is working, training and supervision, understand what the regulations are asking of you. Continual improvement is the last point, right? And they've laid all of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bullet points, Melody, on the shoulders of management. They're not saying the food safety guy. They're saying management is responsible for these things. And what's interesting on here too, they also threw a caveat on here for the third point, which was this is related to the size of the company as well. So in other words, what they're saying in the EU is if you're a big company, so if you're a group like Thales or Danone or something like this, we have higher expectations of you. If you're a small mom and pop with 5 people, we'll take that into consideration, right? Which is interesting, I think.
Yeah, and also I'm with you. I'm very interested in how the execution part of this law, because it almost like the culture, it all of a sudden like a bomb throwing Europe, but then everybody is figuring out the culture yet. That's what I'm seeing. So I'm very interested in how a year later, how they execute it, if they have inspection, what their findings are from that regulation. Yeah, and then another thing I was just thinking about, culture is a buzzword. We hear so much, and then, but like like the Wikipedia said, it's like an umbrella. If you deep dive in within this culture, there are small puzzles. Small can be a supervisor on the line. The larger person could be the CEO of the company. But everybody, we got to put these puzzles together and to move this culture moving forward. And then because we're the expert of food safety, then our job is we pull all the resource, all the puzzles together so we can have this umbrella at your company. I was just thinking about an example, because the SQF Edition 9 coming out, and then I noticed that there is a lot of risk analysis added to each element. And one of my friend was asking me, hey, how do I do this cleaning frequency risk analysis? I asked her back, and I was like, how you come up? Oh, she said we would just do it as it is. The frequency is monthly. And I'm like, how you come up with monthly? Oh, it's just because of experience, because we always doing that. But really, that's the mindset we need to change. And I'm very happy SQF added this, is we also need to ask us, do we need to do monthly? Or is it quarterly sufficient? What's the risk there? Or shall we do weekly? Because the operation we operate as a food safety or quality professionals, it does has an impact on operation. The often you clean, the less production, like the example you gave. Right. But if we could find a way based on risk assessment each time to develop our SOP and correlate, work with operation team, then we have a strong backup. Tell operation, tell sanitation, this is where we're coming from. The risk is low, so we have it less frequent. The risk is high, so we have it more frequent. And then these are also part of we're working towards that culture and bring everybody on board. We are considering their challenge. Like you said, different department has different desire, different KPI, everybody hired for a different reason. But here we have one reason, food safety culture, that I'm pretty sure for a food company, everybody should have this common desire. Then it's the matter of how we bring up everybody on board. Yeah. With this.
Wow, super. I mean, that's great how you circle back around to that. We have to remember that. And again, I've been pounding this home on these calls, Melody, is quality is a combination of the technical and the people, right? And we think it's all the technical, and it's not. It's also the people side. We have to be able to turn around and put ourselves in the shoes of the operation manager, right? His boss is coming to him and saying, we need to fill orders. We need to get the product out the door. We need these many cases this day, right? And this pressure is coming down on him. And he's trying to find ways to do that and meet those goals. And he looks at the sanitation and says, well, geez, if I was able to clean in 7 hours instead of 8 hours, that's extra I can do. And that's his goal. And that's the things that he's working on. And again, just like the procurement example earlier, that's what he's judged on, right? So when he gets his review at the end of the year, his boss is going to come and say, okay, yep, you did a good job making the product. Here's your bonus and here's your raise for next year. That's his world, right? And we need to put ourselves in those shoes and say, how can I help you and make food safety better?
Yep.
Let's go out and find better ways to do sanitation. We'll bring in other companies. We'll look at other chemicals. Maybe there's a faster way to do this that still maintains that. Are there ways that we can automate things? Are there ways that we can do phased cleaning in the plants, right? And once you're on the same side of the table with him, things are going to get a lot better, right?
Exactly. And a lot easier when you execute it. So that's a lot of time I was always saying is that please spend more time on the program development and communication. Make sure it's sustainable. Otherwise, when you will get the hiccups when you execute it. If their production shift, they only have 2 hours in between for allergen and non-allergen, how are you going to do the sanitation? You will fail, because we didn't think about that ahead of time when we plan it. And then here's another thing I really like. SQ, say what you do what you say, right? Yeah. So you plan it, and then everybody clear, we need to clean it. That's non-negotiable, because you need to understand why I brought it to the company. My job is to tell you allergen is a risk. We need to make sure food safety is controlled. And here, let's spend more time how we can balance it, how we can work it out, then execute. And then I think that will make the practices a little sustained.
Yep. And I think too, right, this is a two-way street. On the food safety side of things, we have to realize, and I think you pointed this out earlier, and I'll expand on this, is that the programs we put in place, we don't necessarily have to keep them at those levels. So for example, if you have a brand new plant and you're starting out an environmental monitoring program, you're going to take a lot of samples in the beginning, because you need to understand what's going on. Once you understand what's going on, then you can start lowering when you understand where your risk areas are within that facility. A lot of times we just keep it at that level, right? No, we have a responsibility in quality to help our team members, right, and bring those down if we can, right? So that applies to sanitation and the other things as well too. And figuring those things out, to your point, right, is a risk analysis. And working with those guys to make sure that we're making our goals and helping them hit their goals, then we're part of the team.
Yep. And I really agree with the discussion in the comments, the accountability and everybody's responsibility. I love that, because I think that is what could build the foundation of the culture as well. A very common situation I saw during my audit time is food safety for every records, the verification person is the food safety professional, or the PQI, or the SQF practitioner at the facility. And I'm like, I asked questions. I was like, wow, can you do that many of the jobs? Is why you're taking everything you verify? Can a sanitation production supervisor does that? Like, he was like, oh yeah, we need to think about it and ask ourselves, because you give out responsibility and account, and then people will feel, oh, they got rely on, they have something, they impacted the business. And that really, I think it will help foster the positive culture and accountability and responsibility. I agree completely.
Yep, absolutely. So good points, guys. Let's see. So Cecilia here had a comment. What do you have to say about the new requirements for internal lab sampling and testing methods?
FSI requirements or FDA regulations?
Yeah, give us a little more information, Cecilia. Maybe we can help you out a little bit more with that. But one of the things that kind of what brings all this home and kind of brings us back to the 30,000 foot level, Melody, is I refer to this as telling your story. So the procedures and the documents are just part of the puzzle. You have to be able to explain why you do what you do. And the problem, and I think this really links into food safety culture, is if I'm an auditor going into a plant, and okay, fine, I've set this up, and the auditor is talking with me as the quality manager, and I'm explaining my programs and why we do environmental testing this way, and here's our vector analysis systems and these type of things. Great. Does anybody else know that, right? So if I go and talk with the lab people, do they know that? If I talk with the operations people, do I know that, right? It gets beyond this, right? We're holding all these things. in quality, right? We need to share the wealth and get out there and talk with the team and explain to them, this is why we do the things we do, right? So to our earlier example with equipment design, this is why. Because if we bring in a piece of equipment that can't be cleaned, or we bring in a piece of equipment that's made out of aluminum, is going to be destroyed by our cleaning chemicals. Everybody needs to understand that in advance. And to your point earlier, Melody, the earlier we can bring this up in the process, the better off the company is.
Yep. Yeah. And another example, following up with your lab swabbing. And then what we can tell them is your job is the solution is the sampling, swabbing, but you're actually helping food safety. You're not just go out like a robot and collect samples. And then somehow we got to find a way, like stories or experiences or business, to relate all the employees under this whole umbrella.
Mm-hmm. And let's see, so Cecilia gave us an additional comment here. So SQF, internal lab sampling and testing methods related to SQF.
I don't have the requirements on top of my head, but if you could send us an email, send Bryan an email, and he will be a very good help to you.
Yep, we can help you out with that. We don't want to kind of shoot in the dark here. We want to make sure we're getting your question correct. So Melody, as we were talking about before we started this call, so we keep these around 40 to 45 minutes, and it's amazing, isn't it, how fast this goes?
It is. I mean, wow. And it's already 40 minutes.
Right.
And I survived.
So do you have any closing comments or thoughts around our discussion today on food safety culture and implementing it and all these type of things?
I would like to draw back and what we discussed in the past 40 minutes, like don't get scared or stunned. Oh, culture, it's a big thing. But if we really, from our technical perspective, we put it into different puzzles, and our job is coordinate all these puzzles together to foster this food safety culture. And we can be an impact core team at the facility, at the company, to explain up and explain down why we're doing this and how we can do this to achieve this common goal. A lot of time now, I think back for culture, how we achieve it, it comes down to some sort of, we say, soft skills, how we communicate, who are our audience, the way you communicate up to get resources, definitely different as the way you communicate down to have them wearing the hairnet. But regardless which layer or which level, they are all the pieces of puzzles underneath this umbrella. And again, food safety culture is built up on food safety understanding. And then how it's executed is based on different business operation culture.
Yep, absolutely. So let's see. So we have a question here, and I'm not even going to try that first name because I will totally slaughter it. How do you secure data quality in your platform, making sure that it follows data standard procedures? There's no food safety without quality data.
There's no food safety without quality. Absolutely, I agree with you. And then we have a pretty secured system internally. We have a very professional data engineer team to make sure all of our customer data are securely stored in the cloud.
Absolutely. And part of, I think, a long-term trend in what we're going to see is software in production facilities, the management and security around it is going to be moving more toward FDA medical device regulatory standards. So for example, if you have a CIP program and it runs for this time and temperature and you got your graph and all these type of things, part of what investigators, inspectors, auditors are going to be asking for in the future, it's not there yet, but it's coming, will be, how do you maintain the security integrity of that program? How do I know that somebody didn't go in there and modify that time and temperature to make it go faster? Because if they have access to the program, they can do that, right?
Yep.
So in medical device and those other fields, those programs have to be secure. And that's coming.
That is coming. But I also need to take a moment because of the comments too and readdress, step back. In order to get the data, we need we need a solution to capture the data. So a lot of time here in the food safety industry, we still have the culture to have everything on paper, everything on Excel sheet. So those are slowly get changed. So before we can even talk about food safety data without quality data, we need to get the data. So
Yeah.
if you can help us advocate that digital solution is a very helpful solution at your food safety for your food safety management system, that would be great, because that's one of the challenge we have. Is I know, because I audited all the facilities has their data on the paper report, or their here and there binders. So first thing first, I think in our industry is we need to have a solution provided to each company to collect those data.
Yeah, it's kind of the data versus information, right? If you just collect a bunch of paper and throw it in a file, it's really not doing you very much good.
Exactly. And then we can say data security, quality of the data, we clean the data, we translate it, and we interpret it to information, useful information to help food safety practices.
Yep, totally agree. So my closing around this is the thought, and I think really this kind of encapsulates everything we're talking about here today, Melody, is realize that in your company, you're not alone. You don't have to strictly rely upon your own internal resources. One of the ways that we grow and we can become better at doing these type of things is by talking with other people like we're doing right now, and connecting with fellow food safety professionals and asking them how they're doing things, and then bringing those ideas into your company. And also, this is an important lesson I've learned as well, is we need to get outside of our bubble. If we only talk to people who are doing exactly what we're doing in our fields, you're not going to improve. You have to talk with people outside of what you're doing, and then bringing their perspectives in, right? So outside of food manufacturing, right? Other people are dealing with these things too. So how are they doing these things? And at the Food Safety Foundation, that's what we're there for, right? Because food safety is not a point of competition, right? We're all in this together. And culture is more than just the company. Culture is how we're doing things as an industry. Because don't forget, that's how the consumers judge us. It gets back to our beginning of this conversation. When we're in a foreign country, we view food safety different because the overall food safety culture in that area or region or wherever we're at is not as high, right? And people judge us accordingly by our category. So if an ice cream manufacturer has a problem, all ice cream manufacturers suffer as a result of that. So we need to think beyond just our company and bring those things in to help improve.
Yep.
So on that note, some good information here. Thank you. So yep, we'll close out here for today. And thank you, Melody. I really enjoyed this. Corvium's doing some awesome things out there. So thank you for joining us and sharing your perspective.
Thank you, Bryan, for having me.
Oh, you bet. And everybody, we will see you back here next Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Have a good weekend. Bye.